Hi, boys and girls. Before we begin our history today, I want to tell you something. I want to share that I am really missing seeing your smiling faces. I really miss hearing you recite these timeline pegs because you're all so good at it. I really miss hearing you chant them together. So, this week is our last week that we're going to practice these timeline pegs. Next week, we're going to begin new ones. So, hopefully by Monday, you can send me a video with you reciting these 3 timeline pegs. I can't wait. And I know Mrs. Bennett can't wait to hear you chant them and to see you as well. All right, boys and girls, we're going to practice our timeline pegs. Let's sit up nice and tall to get air in our lungs, in our diaphragm, and we will begin. We're going to say them a little bit faster than normal, but not too fast so that we get confused. Okay, ready, position. Here we go. The Persians first invaded Greece in 490 BC. The Battle of Marathon changed all of Europe's history. The Greek philosopher Socrates was critical of democracy. He criticized Athens' leaders, so they gave him the death penalty. He died by drinking hemlock in 399 BC. Alexander the Great ruled in 336 BC, the king of Macedonia when he was just 20. He conquered all of Greece and Egypt, then took Persia too. Named cities Alexandria, then died at 32. Were you able to keep up? Was that too fast? I think it was okay. But if it was too fast, you don't have to say them that fast. So in your video, you go at your own pace. It doesn't have to be that fast. All right, boys and girls. So on Monday, we kept learning about Sparta and Athens and the Battle of Marathon. And then on Tuesday, hopefully you read about Sparta and Athens, that they were able to keep Greece. But my question was on Monday was for you to find out whether Sparta and Athens remained allies, remained friends, or did they begin to fight again? What did you find out? Yes, they kept fighting. They stopped being friends, they stopped being allies, and they began to fight again. They were fighting about everything, about buildings. Well, you read the story. They kept fighting. So, you know what happened? Because they were so busy attacking each other, and every time they attacked one another, they became weaker. And so, during that time that they were fighting back and forth, there was this king by the name of Philip. And so this is where our new lesson begins today. We are on chapter 25 in our history book, and we are going to read today, or not read, but listen to the story on page 180 to 183. And the title of the chapter is called Alexander the Great. But before I get to Alexander the Great, we need to learn a little bit about Philip. Who was King Philip? So, when King Philip saw that Sparta and Athens were fighting and they were getting weaker and weaker every time, Philip, he was a king of a country called Macedonia. Macedonia. Have you heard of that word before? Have you heard of that country? It's in the timeline pegs. Alexander the Great ruled in 336 BC, the king of Macedonia when he was just 20. He conquered all of Greece and Egypt, then took Persia too. Named cities Alexandria, then died at 32. So this timeline peg is what we're going to be learning about today. So King Philip, the king of Macedonia, saw the opportunity to come to Greece and fight for it and take it away from the Spartans and the Athenian people. And because Sparta and Athens, remember, they were the largest cities of that time, and since they were getting weaker and weaker because of all the fighting, guess what happened? King Philip was able to conquer Greece. So now, King Philip, the king of Macedonia, now conquered Greece. It doesn't stop there though. King Philip wanted to continue to conquer more and more countries. So do you remember this map we worked on this week? So Macedonia, the king of Macedonia came and conquered Greece. And then you know what he wanted to do? King Philip wanted to continue. He wanted to cross the Aegean Sea and he wanted to come over to this side. And what's this side called? What empire is this? The Persian Empire. King Philip wanted to go over to the Persian Empire and he wanted to conquer it. But before he could even do that, King Philip died. So when he died, his son became king. And his son was Alexander, and they called him Alexander the Great. So Alexander the Great ruled in 336 BC, and he became the king of Macedonia. And guess how old he was? When he was just 20. Yes. So King Alexander, or Alexander the Great, he became the king of Macedonia. And remember, they conquered Greece. And now Alexander the Great wanted to continue conquering different countries. Now, the reason why they call him Alexander the Great, you're going to be able to read that in your book. It says, well, first let's find out what Alexander means. Alexander, all of our names have a meaning. And Alexander's name, the meaning of his name is ruler of men. That's what his name means. And he was known as Alexander the Great because he was able to conquer a lot of countries while he was king. During his reign, he was able to conquer many countries. Now, you have a coloring page that you are going to color, and it is a picture of Alexander the Great and of his horse. It was a black stallion, goes the story, and his name was Bucephalus. It's a big name to pronounce. Bucephalus. That was Alexander the Great's horse. And there is a very interesting story as to how he got Bucephalus, and I would like for you to read that part of the story so that you know what happened when before his dad died, he gave Alexander the Great the ability to get this horse. So go ahead and read that story after the lesson so that you know how Alexander the Great was able to tame his horse Bucephalus. So Alexander the Great, he wanted to conquer the Persian Empire, just like his dad. And so he traveled all the way across the Aegean Sea to the Persian Empire, and he was able to conquer part of it, the south part of it, of Asia Minor that we call now, right around here. But he wasn't able to conquer all of it. So according to one story, Alexander, he stopped at a city where he had just conquered in Asia Minor. And there he saw a chariot tied to an axle with a huge complicated knot. And this knot was called the Gordian knot. And it was larger than a man's head. And so Alexander the Great questioned himself, and he's like, what is that? And the people from that city said to him, oh, there's a legend, they told him, for that Gordian knot. And the legend is this. We have a legend about it, they said. the man who loosens up that knot that is as big as somebody's head will rule all of the rest of Asia, which means that if Alexander the Great could undo that big knot, then he would be able to rule all of the Persian Empire. But, they said, it is impossible to untie that knot. Hundreds of men have tried and tried, but nobody has ever succeeded. Well, Alexander the Great, because he's Alexander the Great, he studied the knot very carefully. He was looking at the knot, trying to see how he could untie it. And then he took out his sword, he took it out of its socket, and he sliced the knot in half. There, he said, I have loosened the knot. And so, because no one had ever thought of doing that before, everybody was amazed. Everybody was so surprised that he was able to undo the knot, but not actually untying it, but just cutting it in half. But the prophecy of the knot came true. Remember, the legend was if anybody could untie it, they would be able to conquer all of Asia Minor, all of the empire, the Persian Empire. But since Alexander the Great cut it in half, he was still able to conquer it. And so Alexander conquered all of the Persian Empire. So that is that story with Alexander the Great and the Gordian knot. I would like for you, if you have already started coloring your history page, go ahead and finish that. If you haven't started, you can start now. I would love to see your work of art. So if you can ask your parents to take a picture and send it to me or to Mrs. Bennett, we would love to see your completed coloring of Alexander the Great and Bucephalus. And I would like for you to read that portion of the story that tells you how Alexander the Great was able to tame his horse that he named Bucephalus. All right, boys and girls, continue practicing your timeline pegs. Have a great afternoon or morning. I don't know what time you're watching this video, but I will see you soon, hopefully.